My name's Tom Ross, and welcome to the Honest Entrepreneur Show, where I'm bringing you tried and tested advice to help your online business without any of the bullshit. I jumped on for some live Q&A with some listeners in today's episode, and we talked about your darkest moments, as well as is marketing really the only key to your creative success? All right, so first listener who's calling in is Smith, one of my favorite community members. Appreciate you being here, Smith. For anyone who doesn't know you and your work, do you mind doing a quick intro and then let me know what your question is, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Smith, and I'm a graphic designer and illustrator from the Philippines. Yes, and so my question is, Mr. Tom, how do you get through your worst times?
Wow, dark question to open. I kind of like it, Smith. Yeah, that's a great question. I did an episode recently talking about vulnerabilities. I've talked in my early episodes about hustle culture and how that burnt me out and put me in hospital. So when I think about my worst times, I was screwed out of a business really badly and literally felt like my life was over because the night before I was out celebrating, being like, I'm a success, I've made it. And then I woke up the next morning and that dream was dead. So that was pretty hard. My initial reaction was to run to the toilet and vomit twice. That kind of shows how I felt about that. And then the other time, which I've documented more publicly, was how I put myself in the hospital, had major stomach surgery, made myself chronically sick just through like overwork and burnout. And then I had a 2-year period of chronic health issues. In both cases, really, like, I'm not going to lie, it was incredibly hard, but I think fortitude is what comes through. It's kind of like you have no choice, right? It's like either you remain in this pit of despair and feel sorry about yourself forever, or you pull yourself out of it and have to keep going. And so when I got screwed out of the business, I had to stop having a panic attack at some point and stop vomiting. And I surrounded myself with people that I trusted. I got some advice, and that ultimately led to me going and starting Design Cuz, which is the best thing that could have ever happened. And with the health issues, again, I really struggled. I was in some very dark places, but then I got a dietitian, I got a personal trainer, I got a therapist. I tried to build this support network around me. If you don't need to do that or you don't want to do that, you can do that with loved ones. You can do that with friends and family. But I think when you're in that really dark place, the worst thing you can often do is remain isolated and just try and battle through it yourself. Often it's kind of having the humility and the self-awareness to realize that actually you can't do it all yourself. You can't always dig yourself out of that hole, and you need that support network around you. So that would be my truth, really. I hope that helps, Smith.
Yes, it surely did. It will help.
I have to ask, are you going through some shit right now? Is that why you're asking, or you're just kind of curious?
Just curious, Mr. Tom.
Okay, that's good to hear because you're one of my favorite people and you always sound super happy, but it's like the happiest people and then they've got like some dark stuff behind the curtain. But I'm glad you're all good, and yeah, I hope that helped.
All right. Endless things, Mr. Tom. You're the king.
Love Smith. Thank you, Smith. Okay, so next up, Eric, I just met this dude at Creative South conference, which I'm going to do, I can't even talk today. I'm going to do a whole episode about Creative South in the near future. It blew my mind. It was 10 times better than my already high expectations. And that was mainly down to the people. And one of the first people I met was Eric. I think I walked in a coffee shop and he was just like, "What's up, dude?" We knew all the same people. We got talking, and that was my experience in a nutshell. So Eric's one of many people that made it special. Really pumped to have you on the show, Eric. And yeah, if you could introduce yourself, feel free, like, plug up your Instagram handle and we'll link you up, and let me know your question, man.
Sure. So my name is Eric Friedensen. On the internet, my name's F Dot. That's EFDOT. A graphic designer and mural artist based in New York City. So my question is in regards to the post that you put out today, and then like a follow-up question. So you were talking about how most creatives don't have a creativity problem, they have a marketing problem, and that getting 10% better at Illustrator wouldn't solve that. And I wanted to challenge that and say getting 10% better at Illustrator isn't actually going to improve your creativity that much. It might get you better at the program, but your art is going to remain the same. So I wanted to say that actually I think most creatives do have a creativity problem, and it's not about their Illustrator skills, it's about their voice. And I wanted to know what you think about creative voice and how that ties in with marketing because it is part of a personal brand. But I think it starts first within, not thinking about the best practices for having a personal brand. And so what advice would you give on that? I have another follow-up question, but let's just start with that.
I love it, man. That is a great pushback as well. You alluded to this before the show. I didn't know exactly what you were going to ask, but you were like, I'm going to like battle against what you said earlier. But I think you've done that in the perfect way. You made me wish I'd worded it better because, of course, 10% better in Illustrator. You're right. It's more process driven. We talk about it a lot on the Honest Designer Show, my other podcast, in terms of developing a style and how that, you're completely right, that can be one of the best things that you can actually do to help your creative career. I kind of do lump that in with marketing a little bit, to be honest, because I think that is truly one of the smartest things. So the way I see it, it's like two key pieces, right? Let's put Illustrator skills or Photoshop skills to one side. You've got your style, and then you've got getting that style in front of the right people in the right way. So I think, it needs to be a marriage between that and marketing. And the reason why having your style works so well is because the most successful creatives I know, people hire them because they want that exact style and because their style is pretty unique. If your style looks like a billion other designers, I often say they might as well go with the cheapest option, right? Why would they go with the most expensive option when someone can do it for a tenth of the price and it looks exactly the same? Whereas, Lisa Glanz, we work with Ian Barnard, all of these big established designers, they do a great job because no one else does work quite like theirs. And that makes it very compelling for a client because they see their work and they go, that's perfect for my brand. That's exactly what I want. And so that piece, you're right, is absolutely essential. I guess in my head, I've kind of mashed that with marketing because the two are almost quite inextricably linked. But if you're looking at creativity in isolation, that's the key thing I would focus on. It wouldn't be getting more efficient in Illustrator. It wouldn't be honing your process. It would be trying to develop that style. And I think you can do that to an extent without having stuff like the ideal audience or the ideal client in mind. I think you can do that just through time, practice, trying a bunch of stuff and just kind of developing it naturally over time. That being said, I know some people that have hugely unique, hugely amazing styles, loads of talent, and they're pretty much failing at running a creative business because they're missing the key marketing piece. So having a style alone is not going to cut it. You really need to work out, okay, who's that style going to be a good fit for? Where are those people hanging out? How am I going to get in front of them or, ensure that they discover me in an organic way? I think way too many creatives forget about that piece. And when I put that thought out earlier on my Instagram, the comments are still blowing up now because it's such a common pain point, right? Every creative, they know how to design. A lot of them are actually well on their way or have developed a style, but they're still not feeling the traction they would love to feel. And so I feel like this is probably the single biggest pain point. It's why people like The Future are getting a lot of attention because they talk openly about this stuff because it's a real problem for a lot of creatives. What was the follow-up question out of interest?
Follow-up question was about getting advice. Because when I was at Creative South with you last week, I talked to a lot of different people. I talked to you, I talked to Christo, I talked to other people who I look up to. And then I got a piece of advice from Josh Ariza, who's the owner of Chomp Brand. And he just said, you should take advice from people who are doing the kind of business that you want to be doing. And so if you want to be an editorial illustrator, you shouldn't take advice from Gary Vaynerchuk. You should take advice from other successful editorial illustrators. I thought that was an interesting ad. So I wanted to know if you agree with that, or if you like take advice from a variety of different voices in your industry, and then distill whatever pieces apply to you. But I think that was interesting to have a mentor doing exactly what you want to be doing because they can teach you the ins and outs.
So I would say yes and no, Eric. And I think I can absolutely see the value. And I've done this where I've had a mentor in the exact area that I want to move into or that I'm aspiring to be successful in. And there is so much power behind that because you can pretty much walk their path, but with less trial and error. Say they've done it in 10 years, they can be like, just follow what I did, but don't do all that dumb shit that I did at these points and do the smart things I did. And, it's like a slipstream, right? In the Tour de France, you can just kind of slip in behind them and get there a lot faster. So that's completely right. Josh is on the money there. But I actually love pulling inspiration, like creativity, all kinds of stuff from people in totally different spaces. So the same way that with our creative work, it can become a bit of an echo chamber, right? When we're in this bubble and it's all like our friends and people we know, often inspiration can dry up quicker. Whereas all the cliche stuff, when you go for a walk in nature or like you go and, to an art house cinema or something, you can get different aesthetics which are going to influence your work, which are outside your immediate sphere. And I think the same thing applies to how you brand yourself, how you market yourself. Some of my biggest inspirations in business and creative branding are not in the design space. Like Wistia, you know them? Like they're a video hosting service for business, and they're one of my biggest like business crushes. I love how they put their company out there. I love their brand. I love their friendly vibe. I love their copywriting. I love many aspects of their website, and I've drawn inspiration from that. And in many ways, I feel less guilty because it's not like I'm ripping off a competitor. Like we have nothing to do with each other as businesses, but I can just kind of pinch bits which I like. And I do that all the time. I've done that from like incredibly disparate industries, even industries that aren't so much based online. But like I might see a movie, right? And I love how they do the pre-launch for that and like how they hype it up. And I'm like, oh man, if I got that and twisted it and adapted that for our online business, it's going to work an absolute treat. So both. I think if you're going hardcore mentor, yes, it pays to be in a similar space. But in terms of general inspiration and learning, don't discount people in different spaces because there's a ton of value. And actually, there's a real creative buzz in like taking that and adapting it to your personal situation.
Yeah, that was good.
Cool, man. Glad to hear it. Thank you for jumping on as well, Eric. It was great to meet you. Hopefully we can hang out next year.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Awesome. So next up, we have got Phil. Hey, Phil, what's up? Do you mind introducing yourself? Feel free, plug up your Instagram handles and whatnot. I personally love your work. So for anyone who doesn't know you, what are you working on and what's your question?
Hello. Thank you, Tom. That's lovely. My name's Phil. I run Howell Edwards Creative, and we're on Instagram over at HE Creative. Yeah, at the moment, I'm just wrapping up a book that I started working on.
I love this book.
Yeah, just finishing that. It's in its pre-sale stage. I've got some other stuff I'm doing, paper dolls, bits of stuff for bands and things.
And I love the book, for the record. For anyone that hasn't seen it, it's like the A to Z, like ABC guide. It's like a kid's book, but it's based around punk rockers. And it's so cool. I haven't seen anything like it.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's some stuff like it, but I don't want to be horrible. But it is like, people always just do like the Sex Pistols and stuff. And they're a bit norm, but we're doing some like pretty wild bands and stuff that you're not going to see in Barnes and Noble.
I love it, and I'm kind of terrified to meet you, Phil, because you can see me on video right now. I'm looking straight edge as hell. I'm hearing like the formal shirt. You're like one of the most alternative people that I know. So hopefully I won't embarrass myself when we meet at some point. So what's your question today for the show, Phil?
Yeah, so this is going to sound like maybe a bit first world problem, but it's a good one because I think we talk about imposter syndrome all the time. And so I had that for 6 years of running the business. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to do what I want to do. So I started, as you know, on the 1st of January, just like putting out all the stuff I wanted to put in the world. And we had a really, really like massive response to it. And now we've got like the brands we want to work with coming to us and bands we want to work with coming to us. And we're putting stuff out there that people are buying and pre-ordering, and we've never made more money. But now we're terrified that this is going to end. So like now we're constantly like, this is every month since January, we've been like, this is the best month we've ever had. This is the best month we've ever had. This is the best month. But the problem is we were running the business for 6 years going, we are going to be business to business graphic designers, but now we're not, with business to customer. And so it's kind of like we started from day one again. But so my question is, do we need to keep a hand in the B2B world as like a safety net, or do we just say like, well, let's fold the net up and pack it that way, and we'll just carry on full steam into this and see where this crazy journey takes us?
That's a really good question, actually. And I'm glad you mentioned imposter syndrome, because it sounds like that is the voice in your head right now. I'm a huge fan of going all in on what you love the most, but also what's working the most. And I'm a big believer in following the path of least resistance. So everything you're saying is amazing, right? You're loving it. You're very passionate about it. It's working. You're earning more money than ever. You're getting the ideal type of clients. Like, this is everything you want in a nutshell. And so why would you be at all lukewarm on it and kind of have 1 foot in that and 1 foot behind you in something that you're not really into that much? I think it's so worthwhile because Strike while the iron's hot, to be honest. You never know. Maybe in 5 years, that world's inundated and you find business a lot tougher and you will regret not making hay while the sun was shining. And I've been in that position. Like in our industry, it used to be a lot easier. Now we have to work harder to get in oftentimes the same results because it's busier. So right now, if it's working, you're doing yourself a disservice by not doubling down on that, going all in and just chucking everything you have into it. And because you have the passion behind it, you should be able to get that much more done. So I don't know what the split is. Let's say you're 50-50, one on the other. I predict that if you go 110% into the thing that's working that you really care about, you're going to see dramatically better results, more than even twice the amount of results you're seeing right now, because it kind of compounds, right? Like when part-time for me doesn't work on this type of thing. And I think you're in a very privileged position, having spoke to you previously, where I don't think you need to do both. I'm sure if you went all in on what's working, it would be financially stable enough. Is that correct?
Yeah. It'd be pretty good. But I guess the thing that is in my head at the moment is, rather than the imposter syndrome, is, so take like you were a designer that now is a business owner and you're not doing any client work. Dustin is in exactly the same position where he used to do freelance, doesn't. Ian kind of does less. Lisa does less. Is there a point where like you start to feel like a fraud for not being the grumpy dealing with client designer? Like, so when you go to conferences and you're like, oh, these are the designers, are you no longer part of that? So you kind of leapfrog that club that you felt like an imposter in being in the first place.
Are you saying that you want to be part of that club and you'd miss not being in it, or you want to leapfrog it and move past it?
I think I feel like I spent 4 years in education and thousands and thousands of pounds to get into that club, and then have kind of just gone a whole nother avenue. And it kind of feels like betraying the last 6 years of building the business and the 4 years of education before that. So it's like it's a decade and never really succeeding in that. And then going this way. And it feels like it's like betraying your roots.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like it's perhaps not a big enough reason to deny where things are naturally going. I think it's so important that you follow this thing. If your heart's in it and it's working, that's such a rare thing to get the kind of traction that you're talking about. And yeah, a lot of the reasons where it's like, well, my education and all these things, all of that stuff's behind you, I would very much be looking forward. And I know Ian talks about this. He loves the metaphor, right? And he was talking about like paths opening up, and you never know where it's going to lead. Like if you follow this path, it might lead you to something completely different from that in 5 years' time. And I think that's fine. People kind of like to put themselves in a box, right? And so when you see what organically opens up, like 20 years, 30 years, you might be doing something you never could have dreamed of right now. And that's completely cool. I don't think you need to be like, well, I did this education and therefore I should be doing this, and that's me for the rest of my life. Just see where it goes, man. And like realize if it doesn't work out, maybe you do this and you kill it. That leads you to something else and that kind of fails. And so what? Then you try something else and that's the biggest, best thing you've ever done. Like that's the beauty of being a creative entrepreneur, right? Is that you get to explore those options and that you're never put in a box unless you put yourself in one.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thanks, Tom. That's yeah, exactly. That's perfect advice.
Cool, man. And just to caveat, you mentioned about like things are going well, and so now you're freaking out. I talked about this with Dustin recently. His business is blown up, right? He's absolutely killing it. And he said when he didn't have money, he was worried about making it. Now he's got money, he's worried about someone else taking it away. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And if you're of the same volition as most of us, I think that's being a creative, right? We're all paranoid like sons of bitches at the end of the day. And we, self-doubt and all that kind of horrible stuff. If you've got that going on, like, fine, just realize that's part of you, but don't let that stop you from going all in on something which could be the best thing of your life.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, man. And everyone needs to go follow Phil. Their work is some of the coolest that I've seen. That's all from me. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. And as always, I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode. Really, really appreciate you being here with me. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe right here on YouTube. Remember, tick the little bell icon so that you get proper notifications. I really hope you're enjoying the show. I hope you'll stick around for the upcoming episodes. I really want to keep bringing you as much value as possible. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys soon.